Hello, welcome to the Oral Histories of Hancock County. I'm Michael Povich, and this is the fourth in a series of interviews we've been doing, and this one is, as we would say, off campus. We're at the home of Olive Conley here in Ellsworth, Maine. And Olive is 95 years old, and we're going to talk to you. And how are you today?
I'm fine.
And
every day.
Every day you're fine. So you are 95.
I'm 90. Yes, I will be 96 on May 12th.
Really? Well, happy birthday. So, what year were you born?
What year was I born? 19. You really want to know?
Yes.
1916.
1916. Now, where were you born?
In Ellsworth, Maine.
And were you born in the neighborhood of where your house is now?
Yes.
And where was that?
Two houses down.
And we're on the Christian Ridge Road.
We're on the Christian Ridge Road.
And
my family owned the house that, the chemistry teacher.
Howie LaPaw?
Howie LaPaw.
A lot of students from Ellsworth High School remember Howie LaPaw as a science teacher, some with good memories and some with some fear and trepidation, but he was a good teacher.
Yes, I liked him.
So you were part of a small family, weren't you?
Part of a small family?
Yeah.
Well, depends upon what you mean by small.
Okay, well tell me.
But there were 7 children in my family.
And
they were 2 boys and 5 girls.
2 boys and 5 girls.
Yeah. And
the oldest, what was his name?
Burton.
And the youngest?
George.
Who's hiding behind us listening in.
Yes, he's right over there.
Okay. And then there were 5 girls.
Catherine.
Yes.
Lillian. Harriet. Priscilla. Olive. George. Does that come out to the right count?
Yes, it did. And you and George are the 2 that are still alive, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Now, I have a nice picture here. Can you tell the folks who are going to be watching this who's in this picture?
My brother Burton, who was the oldest, and Catherine, who was the oldest girl, Lillian, my mother, Harriet. She was married to Dr. Gray in Blue Hill.
Okay.
Some people may know him. And Priscilla. And I, and George.
And here's another picture.
That's an earlier one, when my father was living, and my mother. And that's my brother Burton, that you saw right here.
Right.
And Catherine, the oldest girl, Lillian, Harriet, Dr. Gray's wife in Blue Hill, Priscilla, her daughter and husband are coming to visit us before very long. And that's I, and there's my brother right there, George.
Kind of short in that picture, isn't it?
Well, kind of young, probably.
So anyway, you what your father do? Your father was Henry, is that right?
My father was Henry, and he was a congregational minister, graduate of Bangor Seminary.
And your mother?
Mother was not very well, and she wasn't able to go to regular school.
Okay. But she was strong enough to raise 7 kids. So, you went to high school in Ellsworth.
Yes.
And you graduated when?
33.
Now, something happened in Ellsworth in May of 33. Do you remember what happened in 33? That might have been interesting as part of the year you graduated.
That was the big fire.
And where were you living when the fire occurred?
Right here.
Okay. And that would have been in May of 33. What's your first memory of knowing that Ellsworth was on fire?
Oh, the day before.
Okay. What happened the day before?
Just word got around. And the fire never got up here.
Okay.
But we could watch it. Watch it as it took Ellsworth. My father and I were out by the well watching down the river, and he knew all of the buildings that were taken. He said, oh, there goes so-and-so. And
did you, while the fire was going on, did you go into town to watch it, or you stayed here?
No, we stayed right here. And he could tell from looking what the next place was that was being taken.
And how long did the fire burn from the time you became aware that it started till the fire was extinguished?
Seems to me it burned a week.
Burned quite a while before they put everything out.
Yeah.
And when you went downtown, you must have gone downtown sometime after the fire.
Well, graduation
Yeah.
was in the building behind the bank. Can't think of what it's called.
Was that the Derigo Theater?
Derigo Theater.
That didn't burn in the fire, or was it going to be there?
It didn't burn in the fire.
Really? So
Hancock Hall burned at the upper end of Main Street, and that was where we would have our graduation
in Hancock Hall.
In Hancock Hall, plenty of room for it and all.
No.
But it demolished.
They blew it up, didn't they, to try to keep
I think they did, to try to save it.
And that didn't work well. So after the Hancock Hall was destroyed, was the building built in its place?
Yes, you know what the one is that's there.
The Masonic Hall?
Masonic Hall.
Which is now the Main Grind Coffee House.
The Main Grind, right.
That's where Hancock Hall was. Where were you going to high school then? Where was our high school in 1933?
Where Brian E. Moore School.
Okay. And
but we never had graduation in there.
It was going to be in Hancock Hall instead of the Derigo Theater. Where'd you go to grammar school?
Ellsworth Falls.
And how many years did you go to that school?
Well, we lived in West Brooksville for a while.
Did you?
When we came back here to live in my family home that was where Howie LaPaul lived. Forgotten what I was going to tell you. When we moved back here...
You went to elementary school?
I went to, yes. You know where it is? Over at the falls?
Where the
on the rock.
Where the Woodland Studio is?
Yes.
So, how many students, I mean, when you went to elementary school, do you recall which grades you were actually at elementary school?
In West Brooksville.
No, I mean,
was in grades 1, 2, and 3.
Okay,
and then we moved back here.
And
I thought I started in the 5th grade back here. So I don't know what happened to the one grade in between.
How many students in your grade, like when you went to Ellsworth Falls?
30, maybe.
And just one grade. So each grade had its own classroom?
Yes.
So it's not like the one-room school. There was a...
No, there were 4 classrooms in the school building.
What was Ellsworth Falls like when you were growing up?
It had a church and a school and a couple of grocery stores and farmers, of course.
And how did people...
And it had a big blacksmith shop, too.
How did people get around?
Horses.
Still had horses in the late 20s, early 30s? Yeah. Cars also?
Yes, not many.
What about the Bangor Road? What was it like then?
The Bangor Road,
yeah.
1A?
Yeah.
Well, I remember wondering how my sister knew how to get to Bangor, because it was so far, you know, and she was driving the car and had a few passengers.
Really?
And all the way over. My thought was, how did she know how to come?
Was she coming from Bangor or going to Bangor?
From Ellsworth, probably.
And did you drive to Bangor with her on occasion when you were in high school?
Yeah, I was in the car then when I was wondering how she knew how to go.
Not all the signs that we have today.
Oh, no. Woods.
Woods. What were the roads? Were they paved then, or were they dirt?
No, they were not paved.
Do you recall when they could have been paved?
You need to ask my brother over there that
Okay,
question.
but your memory is it was a dirt road.
Yes.
And what kind of cars were people driving?
Oh, Model T. Not very good. Well, some people had nice cars. Mr. Who lived there in Ellsworth Falls across from the store, Mr. Ellis, had horses and wonderful cars.
So the road was basically 2 lanes, or was it narrow enough to just be 1 lane?
No, I think it was 2.
And so if you're driving to Bangor, you must have cars driving and horses.
Yes.
And what about trucks? Did they have trucks then?
Don't remember any trucks.
Did you see what we would call beer wagons?
I don't think so.
But you know, wagons bringing product.
Well, there must have been.
Yeah. So how long
But
did
I didn't go to Bangor very often.
do you have a memory of how long it took you to get to Bangor?
Yes, an hour. An hour.
Well, that's not much different than today, especially in the summertime. So, you enjoyed school?
You're talking about grammar school or high school?
Well, let's
or-
start with grammar school. Did you like grammar school?
I don't know as I liked it very much.
What was it that made you think, I'm not sure I liked it?
The building wasn't very schooly. I guess that's a good word. And we had our one teacher for our grade.
Oh, so
There were
who taught
4
you
grades.
everything? Who taught you everything?
Yes. Margaret Franklin
Margaret Franklin?
was my teacher.
She was close to my teacher, too. Just when I was... Teachers in your day didn't just work at the job for 2 or 3 years and move on, did they?
Spent their life.
I had Miss Smallage rather than Miss Franklin, Frances Smallage.
Oh, yes.
But what was the curriculum like in those days in the elementary school?
They got some music into us. There was one piano and Margaret Franklin played the piano
Yeah.
and taught us Easter time, I guess, about, I can almost sing it to you, but I don't want to do that. The shamrock is forbid by law to bloom on Irish ground. So the songs had a history, you see, and I could never quite figure out why we were learning them.
Was there was there a pledge of allegiance to the flag back then?
Yes,
And did you recite it every day?
yes.
What about-
And I'll tell you a little anecdote.
Yes.
Nobody introduced me as a new student. I just went in and found a seat and sat down. And then there was, they had to call our names and see if we were there, where we belonged. And there was always a question asked that was answered affirmatively or negatively. And most people answered yes, but there were a few people answered no. I never knew what the question was,
Oh, really?
so I didn't know what I was answering to, but I'll tell you what the question was. It was, did you brush your teeth today? And of course, I would never say no, whether I had done it or not. So I kept saying yes every day until she was through asking us.
When did you learn what the question was?
Oh, I don't know. But I know I was embarrassed because I had answered that I had done it, and I had not done it.
I mean, you fibbed?
That's right. That's all I knew.
Is that the most serious lie you've ever told?
I hope I didn't tell any more.
Oh, good. What about prayer in school? Was there prayer in those days?
Our Father who art in heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was said when? First thing in the morning?
When she played the piano.
Yeah.
Which was the beginning of the school day.
That's, you know there's not prayer in schools now.
Oh, I know it.
But
I know it.
Your day, my day, it was the Pledge of Allegiance and the Lord's Prayer. Now, what courses were taught in elementary school?
Oh, gracious. Math and history and English and music.
Now,
most everything.
in the day you went to school, you had those calculators that multiplied, divide, and added and subtracted?
No.
Well, how did you do all that?
No. They put it on the board.
Yeah.
And the sign plus or minus.
Yeah.
And we did the work on our piece of paper at our desk.
And how far did you learn the multiplication tables?
Oh, I learned them all.
Okay. Now, over to high school, we all know where the Bryony Moore School was, and so you would have been there from 4 years, is that correct?
Yes.
And what course were you in?
College preparatory.
And what kind of classes did you have? What did you take?
I had foreign language. I had Latin and French and history, American history. Oh, I had foreign history too. And of course I knew nothing about history. And all the way through school I didn't want to know anything.
Oh, really? Why's that?
Too hard.
History was hard for you?
History was very hard for me.
Why was that?
I guess too many dates.
Is that how they taught history then? It was important to recite dates?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That was hard.
I'm reading a book on the history of the popes, and if you want to try to remember dates, forget it. So, what did you enjoy? What classes did you enjoy?
Oh, Latin I enjoyed very much. And I liked English, but I didn't like history and I didn't like math.
How far did they teach you in math? What courses in high school? You know?
Well, I had algebra.
Yeah.
And another one.
Geometry?
Geometry, yeah.
What about calculus?
No, I wasn't able to comprehend that.
Yeah, or trigonometry?
No.
Okay.
No.
So, you did graduate in '33.
Graduated
got your
in
degree.
33.
And,
That's the year of the fire.
And what did you do for extracurricular activities?
Well, I lived so far from Ellsworth that I wasn't there late enough after school to be in a play, for example. I was in the Glee Club, but I don't think I was in anything else.
How'd you get back and forth to school?
Walked. And then when we got over walking, we caught a ride, if we could, with somebody. And my next door neighbor went to work every day, she and her husband, and they would take, they would take the elementary children, but they wouldn't take the high school children on the school bus.
Really?
So we had to walk.
Now, let's see, Infant Street is just up the road here a bit,
Yeah.
isn't it? And at the bottom of it years ago, there used to be a bridge across the river that went to the shore road. We can see the pieces of it left now.
Yeah.
Was that bridge there when you were going to high school?
It was there when I went to high school. And when I went to grammar school.
Okay.
I rode, and if we were too scared, they let us walk across. But
Scared of what?
the support of the bridge.
So it was a little...
Oh, yes. They tore it down finally.
I wonder if they'll ever...
Yeah.
So it wasn't in
And
pretty
then
good shape back then?
And yes, it was in good shape.
Oh, was it?
In the beginning, it was in very good shape.
Yeah. Do you remember in 1923, the flood?
Yes.
What do you remember about the Great Flood of 1923?
You know the stone wall, I guess it's stone wall, on the other side of the river that leads up to Ellsworth Falls.
Okay.
And I remember coming, my aunt lived in Ellsworth Falls and I visited with her. And I remember coming down to see the river in flood stage. But I came in over, what did they call it? Can't remember. That flood was pretty bad.
Did you see the water going over the dam downtown?
I don't think so.
Okay. What about the dam up at Graham Lake?
I didn't ever get up there.
But what you saw is the flood just basically shooting down into Leonard's Lake.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It was scary.
Yeah.
And I graduated from grammar school in the Ellsworth Falls Church.
The Congo Church that is
Congo
still there.
Church that's still there.
And that's the church you attend. That's the church your father was a preacher at.
A couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, after high school, did you enjoy high school, by the way?
Did I enjoy high school?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I did very
Really?
much.
Why not? Somebody was a teacher. What was it about you didn't like?
Other people had more money than I did.
And why did that trouble you?
Well, I didn't have quite as good clothes to wear. I didn't feel quite that I belonged in the middle of things.
Did people pick on you for being poor?
No, I don't think so.
How many of you and your siblings were in high school at the same time?
George and I.
Just the two of you. So was there a gap between you and who was the next?
Priscilla, my sister Priscilla was 6 years older than I. She was the next one.
And how much older to you was Bertram?
Oh, 20 years older than I.
So 70 was spread out pretty good. But was there a time that you remember everybody living in the same house? Well, all 7 of you, plus mom and dad?
No, not all 7, because Burton married.
Yeah.
And he was out. And then, but all the rest of us, until Catherine went to college, and she moved to where the college was.
Now, Catherine just died just not that long ago, did she?
Not too long ago.
And how old was she when she passed on?
Oh dear, I just put her obituary away.
Okay.
100. I should have that information right here.
That's okay. But
I
you
don't.
think she was over 100, though?
Or close.
Well, you said how much older than you? She was 6 years older than you said.
She was 12 years older
Oh,
than
12
I.
years, okay.
Yeah.
So did everybody in your family go to Ellsworth schools?
Catherine, Harriet, Priscilla, George and I, yes, I'd say so.
Now, when school wasn't in, what'd you do during the summer?
I liked being at home. And so I finally said to Catherine, can't I stay home and look after Mother? And then pick up wherever we need money for in the fall.
Was this when during high school or just when you graduated?
After high school.
Now, did you fight with any of your brothers or sisters?
My sister Priscilla was the one I didn't really gel with.
So when you had spats, what were they about?
Oh, how I behaved or how George behaved, because she was a perfectionist.
Or was she the next
to
George, you, and then Priscilla?
Yes.
So,
and then Harriet.
okay. So she was sort of your warden.
My mentor,
Yeah.
yes.
But you and George, did you ever squabble or fight?
Did I ever squabble when?
With George.
Oh, I'm afraid so.
Oh, well, he said he never did, so you're going to have to tell me what these squabbles were
Well,
about.
I think probably I won.
Ah! So I think I hear in the background chortling, so I think you may have scored a point here. But tell us what these squabbles were about that you won.
Oh,
This is getting interesting.
He had to take orders from my mother to haul water up to my garden.
Your garden.
Yes, not his. He didn't like gardening. And I was bound things would grow. So he had to keep me supplied with a certain amount of water.
And did he?
Yes, he did, because we always did everything our mother told us to do.
Was she the disciplinarian in the family?
Definitely.
What about Dad?
No, he kind of disciplined the grandchildren a little bit. And let me see. Oh, one of the grandchildren was here for the weekend. That would be Burton's son. And he didn't behave very well. My father never disciplined anybody. So he said to either it was Ted or Phil, and I'm not sure which one. He said, you better sit up in that chair and think it over. And when you've thought it over and can be good, you can get down. He hadn't done anything, I'm sure. You can get down. Wasn't 2 minutes before my nephew kind of rose up in the chair and said to my father, Grandpa, I've thinked it over and I'll be good. That was about the discipline that we got. Except that it was usually, go ask your mother. If we asked Dad.
It sounds familiar.
Does it?
Yes, it does.
Go ask your mother.
I think it resonates with me too, Olive. Mother was in charge, father was the nice guy.
Well, that was the same thing.
Well,
here.
Now, you graduated in '33, and what did you do right after graduation from high school?
I didn't do anything except stay home and wished I could have get some kind of job, because there wasn't very much money. And I'd like to tell you an anecdote if I don't make it too long. We who were in 8th grade baked for the Hannibal County Fair muffins at their request. And I thought I could do that all right, and I did. And then they said, we'll put the money that you earn into a bank account for you, the Liberty National Bank. And we all went to the bank to get our money. There wasn't any. We got only half of what they promised us we'd get for baking the muffins.
What happened to the other half?
Oh, I suppose it went with the bank somewhere. Didn't the bank lose all its money?
Well, how much money was your half?
50 cents.
Instead of $1. Good grief.
Never got the dollar.
You get the 50 cents.
Got 50 cents. And that's all any of us
And
got.
you remember that?
Well, yes, I do, because if you're planning for $1 and all you have is 50 cents, that wasn't very good.
Especially during the Depression.
That's right.
So who was helping out during the Depression, bringing in money? Your dad was
Catherine, the older kids.
What did they do
Catherine-
for work in those days to help out?
Catherine went to college right away, and that was typical. Priscilla went to Gordon College, where she could study to be a minister like Dad. Harriet was supported by a rich woman in Blue Hill for college and nursing education. Now,
But how much,
Harriet,
in
well-
those days during the 30s, how much money was a lot of money?
well, I remember an awful lot of salmon sandwiches made with cold biscuits. And that wasn't too bad. I kind of liked that.
Yeah. So,
And then we ate lunches quite frequently at my Aunt Hattie's house, next door in Ellsworth Falls to the thrift shop, which it is now.
let's move on to, you did go to college. You
Yes.
started college, and when did you start college?
1934.
A year after high school. And where did you start college? Where'd you go?
I went to the University of Maryland,
And you lived in that area?
and I lived with my cousin, Eben Whitcomb.
And how did you finance college for
He
that?
paid my tuition and boarded and roomed me.
And how
and,
much was tuition, board, and room back in 1934?
Oh, gracious. I don't know about board and room because that was never on a piece of paper.
Okay.
You know, I just lived there.
So what was tuition?
Not very much. I'd like to say $200.
Okay.
Wasn't a lot. And
Yeah.
he paid that. And he paid my transportation to get from Ellsworth down to college.
And how'd you get there, by train?
Again, yes.
And where did you pick up the train in those days?
Picked up the train in Bangor.
Okay. But there was passenger service from Ellsworth too, wasn't there?
There was what?
Wasn't there train service from Ellsworth?
Yes.
So,
Yeah. But I got on the train in Bangor.
Yeah.
My father waiting until the train had taken me.
So
But he
you-
could remember when I waved to him.
you headed off. Station isn't there anymore.
And when I came home in May of that one year, Mother was teaching Sunday school upstairs in the thrift shop. And this will tell you a little bit of something about her. She had 40 children, preschool, in her Sunday school class. And she didn't keep them, she kept them under control, but not quiet. They could talk and tell her things. And one of the boys put his hand up, and she said, yes, whoever he was. He said, Daddy dunk last night. And she said, oh, no, Daddy was sick. He says, no, Daddy drunk.
Good. But
Daddy dunk.
so you went 1 year to the University of Maryland,
Yeah,
and then
came and worked my board and room to do my second year in college.
and where was that?
I lived in Beasley.
No, I mean, where did you go to college after you?
Oh, University of Maine.
Why did you switch from Maryland to Maine?
Oh, I couldn't get home fast enough.
Oh, okay. So
I didn't want to be down there.
So you
I
went.
was coming home, and Mother said to me, oh, Olive, you're home. And I said, yes, and to stay, too. I wasn't going to let anybody drive me away.
So you
from
went.
the-
You went 3 years in University of Maine in Orono.
Yes.
And did you live up there?
I didn't the first year, my sophomore year, because I lived working my board and room in a private family in Vesey.
So you lived in Vesey?
Yes.
Okay.
And I went on the electric car.
The trolley?
Trolley.
Wow.
Yep.
Now, I think I remember the trolley down Garland Street growing
yes.
up. Yeah.
Yes. When I moved, I went 1 year living with Lillian and her husband in Bangor.
Now, what about your junior, senior year?
I lived on campus in a dormitory, which was for people who couldn't pay their way in a more expensive.
So you didn't belong to a sorority?
No.
Okay.
Catherine did.
Oh, did she?
I still have her pin.
So you graduated about 1938?
I need to go back to Harriet, whose education was paid for by a rich woman in Blue Hill.
Yeah.
Wanted her to come back to Blue Hill Hospital and serve as the director of nurses, which they had never had. And for 3 years, and she did that. And during that 3 years, she met her husband, Dr. Gray.
Philip Gray.
Philip Gray.
Who was dentist or an eye doctor?
Dr. Phil was an eye doctor.
Eye doctor, I know. I was one of his
He
patients.
was a GP.
Yeah, on South Street. So anyway, let's get back to you. You graduated in 1938. And what did you get your degree in?
Bachelor of Arts in English.
Okay. Now you never married, is that right?
No.
Okay. So you then looked for a job. Did you get a teaching job?
Catherine took me around to meet the superintendents in the area, and one of them was superintendent of Winterport. And so I remember the interview with him, and I got the job.
And where did you teach?
Frankfort.
And what grades did you teach?
High school.
High school. All 4 classes. And what courses did you teach there?
Well, I'm trying to think. History, I know. Must have been some English. But it was just a itty-bitty school.
Did you teach math too?
I think this principal taught the math.
Well, let me ask you a question, Olive. For somebody who hated history, you ended up teaching it.
Not for very long.
Oh, really?
Very short time.
So.
But I remember being involved in the Latin part of it.
But you enjoyed teaching English, didn't you?
That seemed to be.
Yeah. So how long did you teach at Frankfurt?
2 years.
And then where did you teach?
After Frankfurt. That's when I think I went to North Haven Island for a year.
And what students did you teach there?
The whole school, high school.
And same courses?
I taught some French there. I don't know where I got that.
In those days, you pretty much taught what was needed.
You have to travel across lines.
How many students did you have at North Haven?
In Frankfurt?
Okay, Frankfurt.
In the high school, there were about 20.
The whole high school? Mm-hmm. The whole high school? Freshmen, all 4 years? That is a small school.
That's small.
What about North Haven?
North Haven was almost smaller. Almost.
And then after North...
But I liked the North Haven school and the teachers. And
how long did you teach there?
1 year.
And then where'd you go?
I went up to Lincoln. Matanock Academy.
And how long did you teach there?
2 years. Because they were getting me ready to go to Old Town High School.
Yeah, the students at Lincoln were going to go to Old Town? Or you were getting ready to go?
I was getting ready.
So you taught at Old Town for how many years?
You mean altogether?
Yeah.
25.
In Old Town. So you sort of found your niche there, didn't you?
That was where I belonged.
Yeah. And what did you teach at Old Town?
English.
That's really, if you're going to be remembered as a teacher, it would be as an English teacher.
Yes, I think so.
And that's how you'd like to be remembered.
And it was senior English.
Yeah. And what was the curriculum? Did you teach writing and literature, or?
Yeah, everything that seniors should take in English.
Making them write.
Yeah.
That's
not as much as they wished I had. I don't mean the students, but the other educators felt that I may not have pressed the writing quite as much as I should have.
Well, the students probably appreciated it.
They didn't mind a bit.
And did you assign, as part of the English, were they assigned reading?
Oh, yes, and book reports.
And what kind of books did you assign to them?
We had a very tiny little library. And I know I did book biographies with them because we had a little bigger section. They have a brand new library now, you know.
Did you assign many reading about vampires?
No, I'm not. I'd get away from that.
That's quite the big...
It is now.
As you know, the Twilight Games and something out there called the Hunger Games.
Yes.
That's where they enjoy watching kids kill each other.
No, I
didn't do any of that?
Do any of that.
Well, okay. And did you live in Old Town all this time that you were teaching up there?
1 year, I lived down with my sister Lillian in Bangor.
But you didn't commute from Ellsworth?
But I didn't commute from Ellsworth, no. I did Ellsworth weekends.
When did your parents pass away?
Oh, you read that to us a while back.
Okay.
I can't quote that.
Father died in 1940. He was 75. Your mom died in 1968 at 98. Is that a yes? As we say in court, is that a yes?
That's a yes. Nod the head.
And then you had somebody live to 101 and a half.
That was my mother's father.
Okay. And what about your siblings? I mean, did they live to long, good ripe ages? Your brothers?
Catherine lived a long time.
Yeah.
She was 12 years older than I.
Yeah.
And Burton died in his 70s. He was quite ill.
You did?
Harriet, Priscilla was 6 years older than I. Harriet was 8 years older than I. And Lillian was probably 10.
So, after you retired, I think we said 1969.
I retired in 69. From
Old Town.
From Old Town.
Yeah.
How can I remember?
Well, as we say, sounds right. Sounds about right.
I don't dare to say.
Okay. But you didn't... When you left Old Town, you didn't go to a rocking chair and sit down and nap all day, did you?
No.
You got another job? In Ellsworth, at the high school?
Yes. Somewhere
about
along the way. I forgot all about that.
Well, I didn't.
I see you didn't. I had to go to work to kind of look after myself.
Yeah.
And that was 1984.
Well, you retired in 84.
Well, you should come back and let me make little notes.
Oh, no,
So I would know better what I did.
We have the notes that we had when we spoke. It's going to my notes. You retired, and in 1969, you became the Ellsworth High School librarian until you retired in 1983.
Yeah, I think 84.
Or 84, sure.
Somewhere.
And the librarian before you was Olive Fortier, wasn't it?
Yes.
So apparently one of the job descriptions is you had to have a first name of Olive to become a librarian in Ellsworth. Is that right?
No, no.
Well, be that as it is, that was a long time ago. And
That's right.
I remember Olive Fortier taught me French and Latin at Ellsworth High School, and she taught my father, graduated in 1926, French and Latin. So
important person.
Yes, she was a very good person. So when you retired in 1984, you've lived here in the house we're doing this interview in. And
I was really taking care of Catherine
okay.
at that time.
So you have, go ahead.
She wasn't too well.
Did she live here too?
Did she do what?
Did Catherine live here too?
Yes. Yeah.
It was just the two of you living in this house at that time?
Well, George would have been if he had not been in college.
Okay, but we're talking now.
Now, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about after you retired in 1984. You've lived in this house since you retired as school librarian.
Yeah, and part of the time, Catherine was a patient at one of the hospital nursing homes.
Okay.
But the rest of the time, I was responsible for her.
So during that time, how did you spend your time, and how do you spend your time?
I did a lot of church work, secretarial. No, not secretarial. I didn't have to write any letters, but keeping records.
For the church in Ellsworth Falls?
Yes.
So it's basically volunteer work.
It was volunteer work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you were at home,
I was running the place here and doing the grocery shopping. And
I know that several times I visited you that this table seems to be your main office, and that you usually sit in this chair over here.
In this chair that I'm in right now.
Yeah, in that chair. And I remember when I first met you, you have an inordinate large number of file cards that you keep, and notes, and a lot of paper. You keep track of things. So it looks like you're always busy doing something.
I'm never free.
So when you're not free, like today, like these days, now that you're 95, tell us, what do you do? Because you're not in a nursing home, you're not having issues with dementia, you're active, your marbles are rattling around in the proper sequence. So when we're not here bugging you, how do you spend your day?
Well, 5 days a week I have a one-step person.
Yeah.
Who is here from 9 or 10 to 1.
Sure.
And I go along with her, things that I want her to do for me.
Okay.
Because right now I have no insurance that's paying for it.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad for any work that people help me do.
But you don't just say, I mean, do you read?
I read primarily after I go to bed. I read the paper sometime during the day.
Yeah.
And I sometimes take a nap in the afternoon.
And what do you like to read when you go to bed?
Right now I'm reading a book that's about a man who wanted to live in 2 areas with lots of land in between. And I'm enjoying that.
Is that
very much.
Fiction or nonfiction?
It's nonfiction.
Okay.
It's the story of his wanting to be in one place and get to another and know what it was like.
But you don't worry about Nooks or Kindles or iPads or iPods?
No, I don't.
You like something that has pages to it that you
Very
turn
much. And I like them to have.
If you fall asleep, you feel heaviness on your chest, and you realize the book's there.
Drop the book, or you drop it down beside you in the bed.
And you hear it.
Can't find it afterward.
That happens to me with the remote, and I'm doomed.
Oh.
You can't turn on TV off or change the channel without the remote anymore.
I don't have any TV in my bedroom.
Okay. Let's we're going to wrap this up in a couple of minutes. I think what I want to ask you are two general areas. You've lived in Ellsworth since 1916. You have a memory of Ellsworth since 1923, which is almost 90 years. My math is correct. Can you tell us what the biggest changes you've seen in this community? Whether it's good or bad.
Well, I've liked to see things happen. For instance, if we didn't have a nursing home, I'd like to see one come into the community. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, we're talking about what
very well.
The Ellsworth of the 20s and 30s. And the Ellsworth today. What's good about the Ellsworth today, and what's bad about the Ellsworth today compared to when you were growing up?
I'm proud of the Ellsworth today. I like that things are happening. There's a new store right away, and I may not get to see it for a while, but I know it's there.
What new store is that?
Well, there have been many new stores.
Yes.
I don't think I'm identifying a new store unless it's furnishing me a sandwich and some potato chips.
But when you were growing up, what was High Street like? You know, where there's McDonald's and Wendy's and 2 shopping centers, and then you go up the Beckwith Hill and you got Walmart and Home Depot and now an empty Lowe's. What was that all like? What was that like when you were growing up, that area of Ellsworth?
It was being built up.
Was it?
Yes. For instance, I could remember it was a car place where, a Buick dealer. That was where the shop is. Remember?
You're talking about the Triangle?
No, I'm talking about right near the Catholic Church.
Oh, Barber Motors.
Barber Motors.
Yeah. But not much went past Barber Motors in those days, was there?
I don't think so. I wasn't around there very much.
And you're not unhappy that Ellsworth is a commercial district for the area?
I'm not happy?
You're not unhappy about that?
I'm not unhappy.
I mean, somebody's got to come somewhere to shop.
That's right.
So that doesn't bother you?
No.
You probably like it.
I think I do.
Now, for those of us who wouldn't know, can you tell us the secret to making it to 95 plus?
My goodness.
With a brother that's made it to 93 plus.
Secret. Well,
what advice to give these young fellows here while they can still pay attention?
Well, I had a very strict mother, and I could never have been a drinker or a smoker and have her for my mother. I think she would have gotten rid of me.
Okay.
And maybe would have gotten rid of some of her other children, too. So I don't know.
Genetics help a little bit, too, doesn't it?
That's right.
I want to leave you with this last thought that George told about. Do you remember that there might not have been a George if something had happened? Tell us about that.
I have been holding that back because I didn't know whether he was ready for that or not.
Well, he might have already mentioned it, but it's a good story to repeat. Tell us about why there might not have been a George.
He was the 7th child. And maybe he's got to remind me.
Your mother was in labor.
Mother was in labor with her 7th child. And my father had had 6 girls and 1 boy already. And he said to the doctor, of course the men in those days didn't stay with their wives through the birth of the child. Now, if I digress, then I lose my train of thought.
Then don't digress.
Well, because it's hard to hold my mind where I want it to be.
It's not a function of age necessarily.
No, I don't think
Anyway, so your father had a conversation with the doctor while Mom was in labor.
And he was in not this house, but the one 2 houses down where Lapa lived. And he was at the top of the stairs because she was on the 1st floor with the doctor. And he said, oh gee, you remembered that, and now you've taken it away from me.
What did the doctor say to you? What did your father say to the doctor?
If it's another girl, don't call me.
And if that had been the case, there would have been no Georgette.
That's right.
Okay, well, we got a George.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well,
and that's our conversation today with Olive Conley. This is the oral histories of Hancock County. I'm Michael Povich.